think the biggest lie in Christendom is about wealth?
Ooh. The Bible says a lot about money. There's over 2,300 scriptures about wealth and possessions and what to do with it, and every verse has been taken out of context 1,000 times to pull it in whatever way you want. But it was fascinating to see the intentionality that Jesus had when he talked about money and the power of money and how it can ruin you, how it can bless you. And that got me on that journey going, okay, I want to follow what Jesus is saying about money. And that looks a lot like becoming debt-free to have the margin to be generous. Here's how to break free from all that. Here's the path to peace. And it even plays on the fruits of the Spirit to go, hey, the principles there, patience. Well, wealth is patience. We talk about self-control. Well, spending is self-control. We talk about joy. Well, generosity is joy. And so I began connecting the dots in an interesting way to say, financial peace and baby steps, that's not going to give you the fruits of the Spirit, but man, it'll make you look a whole lot closer to that. A person with peace, with self-control, with joy, that's the kind of person I want to be. And finances are holding us all back from becoming those people.
My pet peeve really gets under my skin. When you ask someone like, what do you do for a living? They're like, I'm living by faith. And the connotation is, once you get money, you don't need faith. You live by faith. You mean that you get money from people who actually have a job. So
I have faith that if I work, I'll get a paycheck.
Don't even get me started. Hi, welcome to Cultural Catalyst, where we teach you how to live fully alive, co-labor with God, and change the world. I'm your host, Kris Vallotton, and I have a really interesting guy on here, George Kamel. You're the first camel we've ever had on here. I want to tell you that right there. Oh, yes. And you are with Dave Ramsey. You're the co-host of the Ramsey Show, and you also have a show called Smart Money Happy Hour. Yes, and I said earlier, like, is that where you drink so much you don't care how much money you owe? guess that tagline.
I think we get a lot more views if we did that, but unfortunately, no. It's just me and Dave's daughter Rachel, and we have money conversations in a very casual and entertaining way. So it's kind of like the gateway drug into the Ramsey universe when you're not ready to go full Dave Ramsey and eat the rice and beans, but you're like, I'll kind of sit in the sidelines and have a drink.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. I've actually never met you. I've met the other couple guys from Ramsey that we've had on.
I missed you.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Hey, let's start out a little bit. What's your story? Tell us a little bit about your Jesus story.
Oh, absolutely. So I grew up, this is a real thing, maybe your listeners know, Arabic evangelical Baptist. I didn't know how weird it was until I moved away from the Northeast where I'm from in Boston. But I grew up going to an Arabic Baptist church. My parents were from the Middle East. They immigrated in the 80s, and they grew up Christian. And so I kind of grew up in this weird bubble in Boston, this very Italian, Irish, Catholic area in this pocket where we was just the Arabic community. The sermons were in Arabic, but a lot of the kids like me were first generation, so the Sunday school was in English. And so I had a very deep, rich faith background. What's that?
Do you speak Arabic?
I actually do speak Arabic. You couldn't tell by my pasty face, but I understand it fluently. I've lost it a bit after leaving home, almost 20 years ago now. Amazing. It's a little bit crusty.
So did you ever have an encounter with Jesus in your Baptist Arabic speaking church?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those where you grow up in the church, it's just a part of your world. You're like, there's that weird, like, wait, is there a point where I'm saved? Is there a point? Because I've done the prayers when I was little, but did that count? And so you kind of go through this existential crisis where it has to become real to you. Yeah. And I do remember kind of having that fire lit and really being a big part of the youth group and, doing worship leadership. That's when it became really serious to me. Instead of just a tradition, a thing I did every Sunday, a community of people, it became a way of life and something that I looked forward to instead of something that was a task on the to-do list. And I think that took some maturity getting into my teenage years to really feel that and believe it instead of going, I guess I should pray again in case the last one didn't take,
Exactly. And you started with Dave Ramsey in 2013. So what were you doing before then?
So I graduated from a school called University of Mobile, a little private Christian school in Mobile. And as a Northern Yankee transplanting to the South to finish school in this kind of eat, pray, love journey, trying to figure out, what am I doing? I wanted to be in a band. I was working at the Apple store. I didn't really have a path. I just knew that I loved music. I loved marketing. I loved creatively reaching people with any message. And so I was very drawn to Dave Ramsey and the personalities at the time
he's amazing.
that were here in Nashville.
Well, and so you went to, when you first came to work for Dave Ramsey, were you doing a show there?
I wish. I had no experience. I was a marketing guy with a communication degree. So I said, hey, I can like schedule tweets. And so I was like a social media intern. And I already had a college degree, so they had to legally find me a temp job on top of the internship. And over 3 months, I fell in love with this place. And they said, hey, there's a spot over here full-time in email marketing. And so I fell into email marketing for 2.5 years, went back to social media for the personalities for another year. And then sort of my gifting started to unravel over those 4 years as I started getting on stages with our Battle of the Bands event, which is where our actual team members form bands and we do like a talent show with cover songs and we vote on the best band. And so instead of losing in 3 years straight, I went, hey, I'd rather host and get to make fun of the bands and have some fun and bring some comedy to this. And that's what I did.
And you mean Ramsey are still doing that?
Every single year. It's one of our biggest events of the year. We rent, and we have outside companies come to bring in all the sound equipment. We get like 19 food trucks. It's insane. It's better than most concerts you've been to. And so we go all out for that, and it's become a real part of our culture. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door to be in front of people, to be on a stage, coming out of the music world and into this Ramsey world. That was sort of the thread. And a leader saw me up there and went, hey, this guy might be able to be our MC for our live events. He might be able to host our live stream for the Ramsey Show. And they gave me a shot. And that was the greatest gift anyone could have given me.
That's amazing. And then you found your woman there, huh?
Oh, yes. You've done your research. I'm very impressed. I did meet my wife at Ramsey Solutions. And my thought process was this: if you're good enough to get hired for Ramsey, if you're good enough for Dave, you're good enough for me. And so the quality of people here is so high that I was like, hey, if she's into me, let's call it good. And so I put a ring on it back in 2017, was married in 2018, and she's now graduated and retired into being a stay-at-home mom, and the real work began.
What was she doing when you met her at Ramsey?
She's an executive assistant, and so she was working with Dave's right-hand, board members on their journeys and projects, and so she was very sharp, very smart, much better with money than I was. She had no debt when we met, was investing in retirement, and I didn't have a clue. I was a knucklehead with $40,000 between student loans and credit cards just trying to make my way.
And did you practice the Ramsey religion and come completely out of debt?
Yes, I like that you phrased it that way. So when I started here, if you guys don't know this, Dave makes all team members go through Financial Peace University if they haven't, because they want to go, hey, this is what we're all about. This is our flagship product. If you're not aligned with this, you're not going to like it here. So I went through FPU back in 2013, and I got fired up to get rid of that $40,000 of debt. And I knocked it out in 18 months, just really grinding, side hustling, waiting for the lean cuisines to go on sale at the grocery store, 5 for $10, doing every side hustle I could pick up, marketing, consulting, building websites, doing music gigs. And so that allowed me to become completely debt-free. And so over a 10-year period of starting at Ramsey, I went from negative net worth to millionaire just by following the Ramsey baby steps.
So you drank the Kool-Aid, bro.
Absolutely. We
really
call me
works.
the test tube baby around here.
You're the test tube baby.
If you could just manufacture
it. Really works,
it.
huh? Like it really works.
It really works. And again, I'm a normal guy, immigrant parents, didn't learn about money, went into a bunch of debt. And so my turnaround story was, I call it the average George, the average millennial, going, hey, I know where you've been. I've been there. I can show you the path out if you're willing to put some skin in the game and get to work.
That's powerful, actually. How is your faith connected to your financial perspectives?
Early on when I was young, I didn't really know the connection. I just saw my dad write a check for the tithe every Sunday, and he let me put the check in the plate as it got passed around. And so I had a great picture of generosity, but I didn't really understand. It just felt like a thing you did every Sunday as a transaction. And as I got older, it changed the way I saw faith and finances. And it's when I really started to dig into it, to study it, to understand it, and realize that the Bible says a lot about money. There's over 2,300 scriptures about wealth and possessions and what to do with it. And every verse has been taken out of context 1,000 times to pull it in whatever way you want. But it was fascinating to see the intentionality that Jesus had when he talked about money and the power of money and how it can ruin you, how it can bless you. And that got me on that journey going, okay, I want to follow what Jesus is saying about money. And that looks a lot like becoming debt-free, to have the margin to be generous, to look for those opportunities, to build wealth. The parable of the talents. And let's make sure that we double this when the manager comes back and didn't bury it in the sand. And so there's a lot of great principles in there that have helped me build wealth the right way and avoid what culture's saying and instead do what the kingdom says.
What do you think the biggest lie in Christendom is about wealth? Because in the world that I grew up in, if you had money, you were like the rich man who, you
camel
weren't completely
through the eye of the
committed.
needle.
I know, I was going to say that. I was just getting to that. Camel man, you're the camel man. Dude, you should have your motto, your emblem should be a camel trying to go through the eye of a needle. That'd be awesome, right there.
I'm going to have the team work on that design.
You should work on that design, bro. That would be yours. It'd be all yours.
I definitely felt that way. Like, that's how I kind of grew up, was going, well, some people had money and they were rich. And then I realized, well, they're nice. I know these people. They're wonderful, kind, generous people. So I was very confused at this whole, wealthy people are evil. And then I realized, well, what's the number? If you ask someone on the street, how much money is too much? They go, well, more than me. I'm like, okay, so it changes every day based on how well you're doing. So our billionaires are evil, but what about someone with $999 million? They're not evil all of a sudden because they're not billionaires? And so it's been a funny cultural thing to grapple with, to go, what is evil about wealth? Well, it's not money, it's the love of money. It's the obsession, it's the greed, it's the corruption. And so it's not that building wealth is evil, it's that doing it for the wrong reasons and hurting people in the process, that's not biblical.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my pet peeve really gets under my skin. When you ask someone, what do you do for a living? They're like, I'm living by faith. And the connotation is, once you get money, you don't need faith.
Yeah, put the budget out the window. We're just going to let go and let God.
Exactly. And I'm always like, oh, you mean you living by faith? You mean that you get money from people who actually have a job?
There it is. So, I have faith that if I work, I'll get a paycheck.
Don't even get me started, because I'm like, no, I live by faith. And I'm like, oh, you actually get offerings from people who actually have a job.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So you think Jesus was poor?
Was Jesus poor? Oh, that's a great question.
Here we go. You're on live TV right here.
I am not a theologian. You know more than me. If this is a trick question, I'm sorry. I'm going to say Jesus was not poor.
Okay.
I don't think he had a bunch of possessions and money. But I mean, carpentry paid the bills, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And I would say that when he was born, wise men, kings brought him enough wealth to probably sustain his ministry for a few years, in that they opened up their treasure chests.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think other people supported his ministry, and so he was able to be clothed, be fed, didn't need a luxurious life, but also didn't say that it's bad to have those things either. So that's the part where I'm like, okay, he's not a picture of what wealth can look like as far as monetary value. But I do think the way he talked about it, he was very clear that it's more about the spirit than it is the number in the bank account.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you need much money if you can take boys lunch and feed 5,000.
That's the thing. I can do miracles. Who needs money?
Yeah. And if you go to a wedding and they're out of wine, and you subvert the whole process of making wine from, you don't have to grow grapevines, you don't have to ferment the wine, you don't have to bottle the wine, you just pour out water and it turns to wine. I don't know. I don't know if you need money if you can make water into wine in 30 seconds without the whole process.
Yeah, if they could bottle that up and make it a business model, that'd be something else.
Exactly. And if your mother's the one who tells you to do it,
that's the best part of that whole story. Is like, really, it was just an aggressive mother being like, "You're going to make some wine right now."
But how would she know he could make wine unless he was doing it at home?
Oh, that's true.
Because the Bible says it's his first public miracle. So
she did say definitively.
Wine,
it wasn't like a request. It was like, I know you can do this. Pull this one out right here.
Yeah, but think about it. If Jesus never made wine at home, and you never saw Jesus do a miracle, and they run out of wine, what would possess you to say, make wine? So my point would be that this is Jesus's inaugural address, right? This is the first miracle, according to Luke, I think, that Jesus ever did. So, it says first public miracle Jesus ever did. So I would imagine that Jesus was making wine at home, or his mother would have no idea he could do that. It wouldn't be a ridiculous request.
Yeah, you got to test it out at home. Get the flavors right before you pull it to the party.
Test it out.
I love that.
Exactly. Hey, son, do what hey, listen, I only do what my father tells me to do. Well, I'm your mother. Make wine. Yeah, I love that story, man.
That's so cool. I never thought about it like that. I'm going to chew on that for a while.
You pay your taxes by going fishing with a coin. You don't really need a lot of money if you can reproduce things in 5 seconds that take years to do. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of expensive hobbies. Thinking back. No. He didn't have a golf membership. He didn't have any streaming subscriptions. He kept it pretty low key. He didn't even need a microphone.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about stewardship versus ownership in finances. How do you view that? Let's talk about some of the core values of wealth that you teach at Ramsey and that you live out in your own life.
Yeah, stewardship is one of those words that Dave tried to reclaim years back. We had a whole website and brand around this, trying to reclaim stewardship because it had become this buzzword when churches needed to raise a bunch of money. That's when they'd bring out that word. And, biblically, Dave was looking at the Bible going, well, stewardship means that I'm managing this for someone else, and I need to manage it wisely. And ownership feels like it's all on me. You're just closed-fisted. It brings anxiety, and stewardship brings peace, where the ownership brings pressure. And I think that's the key distinction for me personally that freed me when it came to money. And I made different decisions because of it. And so instead I went, okay, I just got this paycheck. I was just blessed with this amount of money, whatever it was. What is the best way to steward this money? Well, it's probably not going to get a car payment on a car I can't afford. It's probably not putting, a bunch of stuff on a credit card, hoping I'll pay it back later. That doesn't feel like stewardship. And so instead, it forces me to think more intentionally with less impulse to make the best decision for the long term, that delayed gratification that we're missing in today's culture.
Would you see yourself, when you're talking about ownership versus stewardship, would you use that concept as the things that you have are the Lord's, and you are a steward of those things?
Yeah, well, we talk about it, that God owns it all. It's almost a running joke here because, hey, God owns it all. It's not mine. So I'm just here to use it wisely while I got it. And when you think about it, we live in an ephemeral world that will pass, and we will pass along with it. So everything is temporary. And so this idea that we need to own things is, number one, a very American spirit. If you go travel to other countries, the idea of ownership, it's not as prevalent. Even owning property and cars is a luxury that Americans have took hold to say, this is the American dream. I'm going to own 2 cars. I'm going to own my house. And then what? One day you pass it down to your heirs and you don't own it anymore. And so everything is temporary, and that is also freeing to know this isn't a forever thing. I'm just here to make sure I steward it wisely. Let's get it paid off. Let's get the next generation prepared to then carry that wealth.
Tell me what you think wealth is. What would your definition of wealth be? Because, when I hear people, those Christians, they're they're teaching the prosperity gospel, and it's all about being rich. And I'm like, well, you haven't read my book, so or you didn't like it. What do you think wealth is?
But there's a big difference between rich and wealthy, because you can feel wealthy regardless of how much money you have, because wealth is abundance. So if you live on less than you make and you got $500 left over every month, man, that's wealth. And if you look at the average income in America today, every single income, you'd go, Americans are wealthy. Even the person making minimum wage is wealthy compared to another country.
Absolutely.
And so the context really matters when it comes to wealth. But I see wealth as abundance. Dave does some great imagery when he's on stage. He talks about the Havdalah, and you fill it with enough liquid that it overflows into the bowl below it. And to me, that's what wealth is all about. How do you know you're wealthy? When you have enough that you can then give to others open-handedly and not be without. So that level of abundance, that's kind of a good definition that doesn't involve a certain dollar amount.
And do you think that wealth is relegated only to money and things?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you've got spiritual wealth, you have physical wealth, relational wealth. There's all kinds of wealth. I think we just think of wealth in terms of money because it's the easiest, most tangible thing to talk about. But man, you look at wealthy people. We would all go, they don't have a wealthy life. Their marriages are falling apart. They've been divorced 7 times. They got 12 kids that won't talk to them, but they have billions. So we all look at them and put them on a pedestal. But I wouldn't want to trade lives with that guy. And so you've got to think about wealth more holistically than just money. And there's a guy out there, Sahil Bloom, just wrote a book called 5 Types of Wealth that breaks all of this down in a really interesting way and makes you think much more deeply than just financial wealth.
Yeah. What would you tell someone? I mean, there's just so many people in debt right now. I'm talking about the kind of debt where you can't even make your payments. What would you tell somebody? Where would you start with someone like that?
Well, most of them are hopeless. I took multiple calls on the Ramsey Show this week of those people who they're in crippling debt. And usually what happened was when life was great and everything was perfect, they decided to take on this payment that they could afford.
Yep.
And then life happened. There was a divorce, there was a job loss, there was a health issue that caused them to go, I can't afford this payment anymore and I'm scared. And so what I always lead with is empathy and hope. To go, listen, I've been there, I know what you're feeling, and we're going to get you out of this. Sometimes that's all they really called for. We're going, why are you calling us? I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have any hope I was going to get out of this. I was about to go file bankruptcy, and I thought, well, let me just call the Ramsey Show and see what they think. So the empathy and hope part is what comes first. Then we can get into the numbers. Because what they didn't call for was a math equation of, well, if you just go make $100,000, you could pay your debt off in 2 years.
Yeah. That
might be the byproduct, but they need to believe that it's even possible to get out of this cycle first, especially if it's generational or their entire married life they've been carrying this debt. They don't know a life outside of payments. And so we have to really paint that picture of what life could look like, dig into their pain. We call it the rubber band, where you're kind of pulling that rubber band back to exacerbate the pain, to get them so angry and fired up, they're willing to do something drastic. They're willing to make that gazelle intensity sacrifice we talk about. And we can smell that out. You can hear it in their voice if they're ready, or if they're just looking to vent, looking for another shortcut, another scheme. And those people I can't help. I cannot help them until they're ready to do it the hard way.
Yeah, a lot of times when people come for counsel, they're actually looking for encouragement, right? And that's fine. We all need encouragement, right? But they sit down like, can you help me? And you start teaching them a new way to do life, whether it's economically, whether it's relationally, whether it's spiritually, so on and so forth. And you're like, oh, you can, within a few minutes, you're like, oh, you're not asking for advice. You're asking for encouragement. And that's a completely different thing sometimes, right? Sometimes those two things aren't related.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the times, here's the other side, they're looking for justification. They're looking for affirmation, and I can't give it to them. They're calling me to justify a bad decision that they either are about to do or already did. And I go, listen, man, I'm not here to argue. I didn't sign up for debate club. I'm here to help people. And if you want to justify why you think you should go lease that new car, I don't know that I can convince you in a 5-minute radio call, because you already made up your mind before you called into the show. And so that's a hard one, because you've got to change someone's entire worldview financially in a 6-minute radio call. And that takes a deeper level of time and resources and education to turn. And usually they're just not at a place of pain where they're willing to change. And so those are my favorite calls, are when I can tell, I can hear it in their voice, the timbre of their voice changed, and they actually feel more hopeful. And I'm convinced, they're actually going to go sell that car tomorrow. Yes. And so I feel the weight of that when we take calls, because I know that our advice does have weight. And some people actually go do the stuff we tell them to do, and the hope is that their life is going to be better for it.
Yeah, John Maxwell talks about the things that cause people to actually change, right? You probably know John. Mm-hmm. Talked about you learn enough, you want to change. You hurt enough, you have to change, right? Those are two of them. How do you feel about people having payments on houses? Do you? And I actually don't know the answer to this question. How you guys feel about this? Like, do you feel like it's wrong or not wise stewardship for someone to buy a house on payments?
That's a great question. Dave has always said that the best plan is the 100% down plan. And we quickly laugh because we know that's not realistic for almost anyone to buy their first home with 100% down in cash. And so we say the next best thing that we're not going to yell at you for is if you get a 15-year fixed rate mortgage where the payment is no more than a quarter of your take-home pay. And that's very conservative. And we get blasted for that, especially in today's world with inflation at the housing market, crazy high interest rates, first-time home buyers. They're yelling at us going, "Are you guys insane? Can you do basic math?" And we're going, yeah. And it sounds like a person who just got out of college making 40 grand can't afford a $900,000 house in California.
Exactly.
That's math. We're not here to shame you. I'm here to go, you make $3,000 a month take-home pay. You want to take on a $2,800 mortgage payment? How are you going to eat? And so we're doing this so it's a blessing, not a burden.
The banks, at least, the last 15 years have often allowed those people to get those kind of loans, which is crazy. Like, how are you going to pay that debt?
Oh, it's scary. We always tell people, don't let the bank dictate your budget for the home, because they will generally give you way more than they should, because they don't care. They're going to get their money either way, whether they foreclose on the house or you make your payments and they get all the interest. And so that's our principle around mortgages. And still, we want you to pay it off as fast as possible. And so even the 15-year is just a forced savings plan to make sure that you pay it off in 15 years. Because we know human psychology, human behavior shows that if you get more wiggle room, you'll take it. You take on a 30-year mortgage, the chances of you paying that thing off in 15 or less, slim to none. But you get a 15, chances of you paying it off in 15 or less, 100%.
Exactly. And you don't have to add, too much to your monthly payment to actually pay it off significantly sooner. Because
makes
so
a huge
much of
difference.
The 15-year loan is interest.
Exactly. And so I love to convince people to go use our mortgage payoff calculator on our website to go, hey, if I just put in an extra $200 a month, how much faster could I pay it off? How much interest could I save? And that's what convinced my wife and I to pay off our house so fast. We did a 15-year mortgage, but we paid it off in 26 months because we just saw, why would we give a bank six figures in interest when we can use that to build wealth and give and enjoy our lives? So we ended up paying it off in 26 months, and we paid less than 10 grand in interest because of that aggressive take, which I understand not realistic for a lot of people, but it's just, hey, set a goal that scares you a little bit and go for it, because your life is too precious to spend it giving the banks more and more money every single year of your life.
Yeah, and so much of the economics of this generation is what kind of payment can I afford? Well, if you stretch it out far enough, you can afford, you could owe $2 million and you could probably afford the payment because they'll just stretch it out forever, right? It's like credit card debt is like the worst. Like, it's interest on top of interest. They don't want you to pay that thing off. That's how they're making money.
Yeah, those payments it's like, well, just pay us $75 a month. And you're like, but don't I owe you $20,000? Isn't the interest 25% APR? They're like, yeah, don't worry about it. You got $50, that'll keep you current. And then you realize how much interest you're paying. And the same goes for the car lot. There's a reason the dealerships, every time you go in, here's what the salesperson says to you. What kind of payment you looking for?
Exactly.
Not how much car can you afford, because they need to sell a car today, and they make more money from the financing than they do from the actual car sale.
Absolutely. I'll pay for all of my cars in the last 10 years, 15 years cash. I don't like that at all. And then they're like, oh, you need to buy this warranty. And, I'm like, I was in the automotive business for 25 years. I know.
Oh, you know it better than anyone.
Well, I don't know better than anyone, but I know it well enough to know that these are all things that the dealers make tons of money on. And they always got a gig. Like, if you don't buy the warranty today, you can't get it later. And then, 2 years down the road, they send you a letter like, hey, would you like to buy the warranty now that your car has 30,000 miles on it,
Oh, my goodness. And the funny part is they go, well, what if something happens to the car? I was like, I thought you said this car was in great condition. Exactly. Why are you all of a sudden concerned? Should I not be buying this car? Could the transmission blow tomorrow? What are you not telling me? So that's always a fun thing to do. I like to mess with those guys. Anytime they tell me, well, you got to go. They ask me, why aren't you financing this? That's a smarter move. I said, I don't want to pull this card, man, but just Google me. I don't have time for this today to explain to the finance office why George Kamel's not going to finance his car.
Hey, you wrote a book, Breaking Free from Broke. Let's do a little gig on your book. What's your book about?
We've called it The Ultimate Guide to More Money and Less Stress. And so I see this whole system, this American financial system that we're in, as a system that is chaining you. And we've all been chained to the system for 1,000 reasons. Maybe it was our upbringing. Maybe we fell into some traps, a lack of financial literacy. Whatever it was, we are chained. And so to break free from those chains, you need something more powerful than the system that you're in. And so I see this as, if we can follow these kingdom ways of handling money, we can break free from the cultural chains that we've been placed under and find a much more peaceful, more successful path to the wealth and freedom that we all desire. And so that's the funniest part, is all these debt companies now are pitching financial freedom. The buy now, pay later companies say, hey, get some breathing room in your budget. We'll give you financial freedom. And I'm going, they're using the same verbiage we are. And so there's so many traps out there. And I wrote this book to outline every single part of the system, from credit scores to credit cards to car loans to mortgages to investment traps to student loans, to show you how screwed up it all is, how predatory it all is. And then the last quarter of that book is, here's how to break free from all that. Here's the path to peace. And it even plays on the fruits of the Spirit to go, hey, the principles there, we talk about patience. Well, wealth is patience. We talk about self-control. Well, spending is self-control. We talk about joy. Well, generosity is joy. And so I began connecting the dots in an interesting way to say, this is, financial peace and baby steps, that's not going to give you the fruits of the Spirit, but man, it'll make you look a whole lot closer to that. A person with peace, with self-control, with joy, that's the kind of person I want to be. And finances are holding us all back from becoming those people. And so that was the purpose of the book. And I hope it does the job. And the reviews have shown me that. The feedback people give me, man, you changed my mind on credit card. I cut them up. You changed my mind on credit scores. I realized how crazy of a game it is. I was on the cusp of taking out student loans, and I decided to go a different path. And so all of those messages give me hope that we're going to see a whole generation rise up who won't be tied to those chains.
That's really cool. Where can they get your book?
You can get it at RamseySolutions.com, Amazon, wherever you get your books. There's also an audiobook that we tried really hard on. I read it myself. I wrote music for the intros and outros. We did sound design. I wanted it to feel more like a podcast narrative experience versus just a guy reading a book. So that's available as well.
Does it have a picture of a camel going through the eye of the needle?
We should have done that. We do have my mom speaking in Arabic in the book, because there's a great quote. You'll appreciate this. It's an old Arabic saying that goes, El Jamal bi'ish, Uma andi ish. And that literally translates to, the camel costs 1 penny and I don't have 1 penny. And so that's in my spending and self-control chapter to go, even if it's on sale, even if it's a penny, if you don't have a penny, don't buy it. It's that simple. And if we all just live like that, man, we'd be in a much more peaceful place.
Yeah, I talk about, like, in my wealth seminars, I talk about the fact that, our grandparents, when they ran out of money, they actually couldn't buy anything.
Can you imagine?
They literally couldn't buy anything.
What did you do? How did you survive?
I know. It's like they couldn't buy anything. It's like, it's a new concept. You ran out of money and you actually couldn't buy anything. And they didn't have credit cards in those days. They had home loans that you had to really qualify for, and so on and so forth. So
the Gen Z retort is, well, they had nothing to buy. What was there to buy back then? It was a sad time to be alive.
A sad time to be alive. Exactly.
You can buy potatoes at the farmer's market.
Exactly. Okay. You also have a show. How can we get to you? You have a email address or a how do we get to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can go to georgekamel.com and it'll point you to all those places. That's Kamel, Camel with a K. And I've got Smart Money Happy Hour. That's the very fun, entertaining, lighthearted show with Rachel Cruz, Dave's daughter, who's another Ramsey personality. I've got my own YouTube channel under George Kamel on YouTube. We do 3 episodes a week teaching people about personal finances with a lot of humor and pop culture references to keep it alive. And then the Ramsey Show. I'm hosting that multiple times a week, taking calls. So if your viewers, listeners have calls, we'd love to hear from them. And you can always find me at George Kamel on all the social media platforms, and I'd love to hear from your folks.
George, thank you so much for being on. Great show today. Great interview. I love you. I'm going to check out. I've never heard you either, so
this is great.
Put this together, and
well, I'm a fan of your show as well now, so thank you for that. And you do a great job interviewing and a great work with your ministry. So thanks for what you guys do.
Thank you very much. Well, God bless you.
You too.